everybody, and welcome to the Visiting Artists Lecture Series. This is our first one for the spring semester. Thanks for your patience as we get the spring weather to cooperate. That's really good. But today I'm really happy and really proud to present that we have Willie Cole talking to us. Finding beauty in the commonplace, some may even say banal, is one of artist Willie Cole's strengths. His ability to rejigger the consumer world around us into something more fantastic creates the illusion that his art springs from the mystical intersection of folk culture, utility, design, contemporary art, and mythology. That was a quote by Hrag Vartanian from HYPERALLERGIC. Willie Cole's work has been the subject of several one-person museum exhibitions: the Montclair Art Museum in 2006, University of Wyoming Art Museum in 2006, the Tampa Museum of Art in 2004, the Miami Art Museum in 2001, the Bronx Museum of the Arts in 2001, and the Museum of Modern Art in 1998. Several of his sculptures were included in Reconfiguring an African Icon, Odes to the Mask by modern and contemporary artists from 3 continents, which opened in March 2011 at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. In 2010, a survey exhibition of his work on paper, 1975 to 2010, took place at the James Gallery of the Graduate Center of the University of New York, and later traveled to the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art, the Moody Gallery of Art at the University of Alabama, and the Rowan University Art Gallery in Glassboro, New Jersey. In January 2013, Complex Conversations, Willie Cole Sculptures and Wall Works opened at Albertine Monroe-Brown Gallery at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo. The exhibition will then travel to the Weatherspoon Art Museum in Greensboro. So as you can see from this, he's an incredibly accomplished artist. I first saw Willie's work in about 1990 or 91 at Oberlin College when I was teaching there. And he was in a show that was called Young Americans that was curated by Liz Brown. Right. And that was, I remember at that time we saw him and I thought, this guy's going places. So I followed his career ever since. And I was really lucky through a friend to get connected and be able to invite him to campus. He's working on campus to realize a project while he's here. And I think he'll show that and talk about it a little bit on. But please, without further ado, welcome Willie Cole.
Well, I've never had an audience like this before, but it's good to see you all here. I've done so many PowerPoints. Like I had a traveling show in 2005 that got me on this artist talk kick. When I have the traveling shows, every venue wants me to come and talk. So that has ended up being like probably 8 or 9 PowerPoints a year up until last year when I just couldn't take it anymore. So the presentation I'm showing you now is one that I've added things to it, but it was actually made for one of those kind of occasions. I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm not sure the images, but from the location, I know that my goal was to tell people, maybe to make it clear how I come up with concepts. So this first slide, or I say this first image gives you the again, volume. Can you all hear that? So that was my inspiration source in the 80s, was this speech pretty much. Because I'm like a child of the civil rights era. When this speech was made, I was like probably in middle school, like in the 7th or 8th grade. And I'm surprised it's still playing. And I wanted to find a way to speak about Africa and America at the same time, because I was labeled with this label African American, which was a strange one, which is a strange label that evolved over the years. You know, I sometimes say that I was born colored. I was born in 1955. By 1960, I was a Negro. A few years later, I was an Afro-American or Afroed American. Even declared on TV by Jesse Jackson, which was pretty bizarre, I thought, to give a race of people a name on public TV like that. Then, you know, thanks to James Brown, suddenly everybody was black and proud, and we were suddenly black people. Then we became African American, which sounded much more formal. And nowadays, so many names that, you know, I don't know what most people think of themselves as. I think of myself as an American. Although I just did 23andMe and I found that I'm 90.8% African and 40% Nigerian. But so the Malcolm X talks about the house Negro and the field Negro. And all of my work that got me to this place in my life began with those concepts. So when I thought about house Negro, the slave who works in the house, the field Negro, the one who works in the field, they come from the same place, the same experience, but the house Negro has shed all of his tribal identifiers, of which the field Negro is still, you know, singing out there as they do whatever they're doing. I imagine, and I did visit the plantations in New Orleans one year, and I imagined that the house Negroes, after the workday, or the field Negro rather, after the workday, becomes a continental African again. So you get out of the field, you go back to your hut, and suddenly you're yourself again. You know, you're practicing all your rituals from your indigenous religion, all your indigenous practices, which the field Negro has hidden all of that stuff inside of Christianity. So that became the impetus for my work. So I said, now if the house Negro, like the field Negro has icons in his cabin that reflect his African origin, the house Negro doesn't have that. He lives in the house, so he's got to find other things. So one thing he found in my imagination was the steam iron. Oops, backwards. And this explains the steam iron origin for me as an artist. So the steam iron, you see it's above the line. You see the steam iron in the middle is black and silver. The silver part is kind of shaped like a boat. The handle is black. My son was a physics major, and he explained to me this thing called the Lewis tables. So this inspired this graphic here. So that black handle, which is on your left, at least to the left side of the screen, where there's a black woman who is a house servant, right? One on the right where it's silver, and silver is money, is a white American woman, a happy 1950s housewife just ironing her clothes. So those are two different steam iron experiences. So, but I traced the origin of each of those, and of course the domestic worker, in this case Hattie McDaniels, the actress, derives from the slave trade. So beneath her you see a man in chains, a slave, and of course he was stolen from Africa, so that Africa is below him for that reason. On the other side, the American housewife, it was all about affluence, owning a home and having money, so that's why that's below her. But in the middle column, as I said, the silver part of the steam iron looks like a boat, so there's a nice boat below that. But you know, if you do some sort of cross math, then this American domestic worker, slave in continent of Africa connects to the slave ship. So money in Africa was a result of the slave ship. So I guess that I would call those just social issues. But if you go above that, you're dealing more with nature. So right above the iron, you see the periodic table symbols for the iron, Fe, and I think it's 30 protons and 20 neutrons. It might be the other way around. I haven't thought about it in a long time. So that represents the iron there. On the right side is heat. Of course, you can't iron without heat. Even without electricity, you still need heat. And on the other side, you see water. You can't have a steam iron without water. So those are elements in my mind connected to the iron. Above that is the spiritual level, where the West African god of iron is in the center. His name is Ogun. And on the right side, you have the Shango dance wand piece, the one on this side here. And Shango would be the West African deity who is represented by thunder, and which is electricity, which is also heat and fire. So that's why he's on that side. And the other side, you have a female deity who in West Africa would be called Yemeya. I know it looks like the Starbucks logo, but that's, it's the mermaid symbol. Yemeya would be a mermaid, or in Haiti they would have one called Mama Wata, who would look like that as well. So all those things came from contemplating the steam iron, making a list of words, first describing it physically, describing it socially, describing it scientifically, and describing it spiritually. And all those things became inspiration for me to brand myself as Willie the Scorch and make art with the steam iron for 10 years or more, just so people would always say, oh, that's a Willie Cole piece. So that was my marketing plan when I was a young artist so many, many years ago. And it was inspired because there's so many different brands. They all have different patterns in the bottom. And I began to see those patterns as tribal marks. I think this is me in my studio back in those days. If I can make it play. But I began to see each brand of iron as a different tribe. I'm not a mouse guy, so I'm trying to get it on there. Did not work. Okay. So I began to see each brand of iron as a different tribe. So, of course, offhand, we got the Silexes, we got the Sunbeams, we got the Black & Deckers, and there are several other brands. But this was my studio back in my iron days here. This is actually in Newark, New Jersey. The building's been torn down now. This piece evolved quite a bit. It's actually in a lot of museums now. So, like I said, so I became Willie the Scorch. The iron was the tool. It was a symbol. It represented the gods. The scorch was evidence of the power, so that's why I started scorching. And then, ironically, in my studio at the time, I had been living there for maybe 2 years as a graphic designer, and I had a 9-to-5 job doing computer graphics. I got fired from my job and decided to become an artist. And that year, I noticed a scorch on the floor of the studio, which I had never seen before. I'd been living there for a couple of years, Yeah, we could do it without the music, yes. Without the Miles Davis in the background. Yeah. So it made me feel that it was meant to happen that way, that I'm in this former sweatshop, there's scorches on the floor, I find an iron on the street, so, things that come my way that I need to pay attention to. And that's something I often say to my own children who are now adults, is that, things are looking for you. You just got to pay attention. Your success is looking for you. Your love is looking for you. Everything you want wants you, but you just got to stay alert to know that it's there. So this ends with me actually scorching something, heating up the iron, putting it down on canvas there. I heat them on a hot plate back in those days. Nowadays I would use a forge, which I have in my studio, but I don't do too much scorching anymore these days. This was probably around 1990, this video. Made for a show, no, it's made for that show at MoMA, so what year was that show? I know you just read it all, but yeah, so this is from that time. Let's see what's next here. So this shows me down in my courtyard, scorching, ironing boards. You know, when you get this kind of inspiration, it seems insane, like you're in another plane for a little while. You're just following your inspiration. You don't know what's going to happen, but you just follow through. And these were the pieces I made back in those days. 1988, I started doing these pieces. This piece may have been exhibited at Orland, actually. But I did a series called Presence and Evidence. I wanted to show the God and the God's power. So the scorch represented the power. I mean, you can look at an iron and you say, oh, that's a beautiful object, but you don't know how powerful it is till you burn something with it. So that led me to those concepts. And to these next few pieces, I assume. This one shows all the different tribes and the tribal marks. These are tribal shields, inspired by the Zulu shields, but they're just scorched iron boards. The New York Museum has one of these, the MoMA has one of these, and there was a bunch of them, but that was my thing back in those days. This is my 1992 announcement card, first time I exhibited scorches publicly. Also, Brooke Alexander was my dealer back in those days. My second New York dealer. And I was fortunate enough to get a write-up in Interview magazine before Andy passed away. So this is from that article. It said the scorch was African to me. So this piece is called Zulu and Silex because two Proctor Silex irons end to end look just like a Zulu shield in my mind. So I imagine this was the war between the British and the Zulus. And of course the British, they didn't win the first time, but they won the second time. And the whole area was covered with their shields because they had all been shot by the British. So this, as beautiful as it is, to me it's about that battle. Here you see famous graphic of the slave ship called Brooks slave ship. And here's my version of it, inspired by it at least. When I was a kid, I had a book called Black History in America. And when I was moving out of my studio in Newark, I found the book. I'd had it since I was like 9 years old. And I found a chart that showed the slave ship and the way the slaves were housed in the ship. And that's what inspired the ironing board. Suddenly became a slave ship for me. It's a woodblock print. So after so many years, the scorch became not just a mode of expression, but a mode of money to make a living. So now everything had to be scorched for me just to make a living as an artist, you know. So I get invited to do various prints. Yeah, I had it right, 20 protons, 30 neutrons, yeah. So this one here was done at Tamarin, walking around Albuquerque and seeing all the crazy plants they had led to that. And this one here is called the Ogun sisters, Ogun being the god of iron, and every symbol in there represents iron. Like the Veve, what they call these marks in Haiti up top, represents Ogun. The women are wearing the badges that represent this symbol here, 26 protons, 30 neutrons. The first iron I found reminded me of a Dan mask. The Dan are the black people that were returned to Africa, and the U.S. developed a colony, and the people were Dan, so they're wearing the Dan masks for that reason.
Are those supposed to present photo shells by any chance around the border?
Pardon?
Shells around the border?
You know, art. Yes. So yeah, sure, yeah. But yeah, they're in placement for that, but they can be a lot of things. But yes, cowrie shells are important to me. In this case, they may represent something else, though. This is actually, the colors represent different gods from West African traditions. And the scorch itself, the whole configuration suggests a woman because those colors represent the female deities in the Yoruba pantheon of gods.
Is this a painting or a print?
This is a print, silkscreen print. Yeah.
What's its title?
What's its title? Home and Hearth. And personally, this is my divorce print. So that's why it's female and sperm, and it's all about family and all that stuff. This I saw on a poster here. This is inspired by a Japanese woodblock artist, Hokusai. Synchronicity, right? A Japanese woodblock artist who had a piece called The Sparrow Dance that I always loved. So mine is called 5 Stances of Domestic Defense. But it was inspired by that. So these are actually scorched on paper. And I actually did these in my kitchen with the stove. Take the iron completely apart so the bottom is just the metal part. And vice grips on the burner for 15 minutes. And once it gets hot, I can do the whole piece, but I can't control it because of the smoke and because of the heat. So I just find the center of the paper and just start and drop the iron. So, after all that stuff of turning the iron into such an icon, I decided I should make myself part of that experience, and I became the warrior. And this is actually 14 years ago. So this is the Silex warrior, and that's the Sunbeam warrior. This guy, just FYI, is available as a coffee mug at the Montclair Museum or a barbecue apron. It's kind of become like my logo in a lot of ways. Oh, twice. The strange thing is that everything that I imagine happened because this is actually in Africa on a college campus, and they're using their ironing boards as shields. There's a riot on campus. The police are shooting at them and all that stuff. I couldn't get the whole video, but I got this snapshot of it. So this is that cliche of life imitating art, or the other way around. But I was so, I don't know if I'd be surprised, but moved to discover this image. It made me feel like I was, I don't know, the prophet. That's a tough one. I wouldn't say that, but I was in line with history, but I was a few beats ahead of it. This again goes back to Malcolm X, the house and the field Negro. When I grew up, the lawn jockey represented kind of a racist symbol in this country. But in my adult life, studying various religions, I recognized that these colors represent certain deities. So I made the lawn jockey the deity named Elegba. Elegba is the deity that stands at the crossroads of all your choices. I don't know if anybody here knows anything about Ifa or Yoruba traditions. But Elegba is at the crossroads. The presenter of choices is the subtitle of this particular character. So I use him in the form of a lawn jockey because the Elegba stands at your front door, stands at the crossroad, and a lawn jockey stands at the front door or at your crossroads. And this was also inspired by a book by Maya Deren called The Divine Horseman. And in that, she was studying Haitian voodoo traditions. And she pointed out that the first god that you make your offering to is Elegba. And if that offering is accepted, Elegba leads you to the higher powers. So that's like Christians, everything in Jesus' name, amen. Some may not agree, but so that means that Jesus now either takes you to the higher power, it's AKA God. I know a lot of people believe that Jesus and God are the same. I personally don't, but so that's, Elegba is in the Jesus Christ position in that Yoruba tradition. Cowrie shells, because cowrie shells are used for divination. You roll the shells to read the future. So he's seeing his future through African tradition, but he's holding a Western cross in his hand, so he's the house Negro. So he's got all these Africanness about him, but he's in a position in the Western world as a house Negro. Whereas the other guy is dressed in a warrior skirt. He's like the Ninkisi. He's got a blade, he's got mirrored eyes, so he's for battle. So this piece is called House and Field. The straight out lawn jockey with the cowrie shell eyes is house, and the other one is field. And they make up a chessboard called To Get to the Other Side. So 2 teams here. I don't know if the next, yeah, you can break it down. This one here with the bundles, I was thinking about how homeless people carry their bags with them. So that would be the rook, which is the castle on the chessboard, the homeless one. The plain ones are the pawns. The Ninkisi ones are the knights. The one with the ties, that's the royals. He's wearing power cloth, neckties. This is at the Tang Museum in their collection. They actually showed this piece a few months ago. So again, like somehow I find a way to milk everything until it's empty or near empty. So once I hook onto an object or an icon, I try to, like the chart, I do that with everything and develop it to the point where I can talk about it easily and it makes sense. So I recognize that the lawn jockey looks a lot like the sower in Van Gogh's painting. You know, they're both standing like that. I also recognize that in the Bible there's a story about the sower. So this combines all those things together. It says the sower went forth to sow, and when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside. If Elegba is presenter of choices, then Elegba is the sower. Elegba is giving you seeds for you to make choices. So that's why that image is associated with those words. Fallen by the wayside, as it says in the Bible, has to do with not taking root. So this lawn jockey, based on the other image with the Cairo eyes, has kind of foregone his African roots in a lot of ways, but he still sees the world through African eyes. So some seeds fell by the wayside refers to that. And I'm in the movies, so to have an image above another image was my attempt back in those years to be cinematographic. I make a little music too, so this is my personal soundtrack. This is me on my Roland D5 upstairs above the garage with a little microphone. But this installation is called the Elegba Principle, and it's a room of revolving doors. It was actually in Patterson until a year ago.
It was at the Patterson.
Right, the Art Factory, yes.
I saw it.
And it's currently at a museum in France, in the city of Lorraine. The museum is called the Hrag. So, but it was created here in San Francisco, and the videographer came before I put the text on the door. But this represents and exhibits the concept of Elegba, the presenter of choices. One of Elegba's symbols, again, is a doorway and the cross. So the revolving doors make the cross at the top. And you walk through the door, you got to make choices. Every door had a word on it, like you walk, to fried chicken, you make a left, a new bride, you make a right, so it's that kind of thing. You're never in a space more than what the four doors allow. So this was just before the opening here. It's one of my favorite pieces. I just wanted to see the size of a football field, but I haven't had a chance yet. I have a proposal now to do this in Europe with screen doors, so it can be outdoors. But they're still trying to get the funding together. Okay, I'm gonna try to move on. It goes on for at least a minute. Okay. This is an opportunity I had to do an exhibition in my father's hometown. My father was born in Nevada, North Carolina, which is a town it's actually a toilet about that big, and it's next to a big city of Wilmington, North Carolina. So without knowing my connection to that part of the world, the Cameron Museum invited me to do a show about School Desegregation Act. In that year, the schools were, not in that year, but in the 50s, the schools were closed down in the small communities like Nevada, and the blacks were bused to other schools just to integrate the schools. And so the people who went to the original high school in Nevada, they had all their memorabilia, and the museum asked me to make something out of the memorabilia. They had a lot of trophies, so I took these two trophies to speak about violence. So that's how that one came about. And these blackboards were the same thing. So I had 4 blackboards in pairs: civil rights, one pair; black and white, another pair. And I'm also a writer, so I'm into what I call backronyms. When I first got a career as a visual artist, prior to that I had had a career this big as a writer. A lot of rejections, but maybe that much success. when I was doing both at the same time, but once my artwork became popular and in demand, I didn't have time to write. So I figured I'd write in the art. I started making backronyms. So an example, my first blackboards were Columbus, and I use a blackboard because that's where I learned about American history. I don't remember any of the Columbus backronyms now, but my second blackboard was America, and I remember America acronyms because some of them are my favorites. One of my favorites is Adam makes Eve regret ingesting contaminated apples. Another one is all my eagles remain in combat area. So they're all based on what's happening in the world. In the beginning, I was sitting down with the Village Voice and New York Times highlighting words in every story, or sitting in front of the CBS News trying to summarize the story into one sentence that used the letters of the word America. So here I'm doing the same thing with black and white. Some of these are pretty funny to me. I can relate to them. You know, like some are funny. Like I like the one that says blues legend annoys Christian kin. Because I had a wild uncle, and my mother's family is like ministers and all religious people. So when this uncle would come around, it was kind of like a contrast. So that's what that sentence is about. So I have a lot of them for the word white, the word black, the word civil, and the word rights. So this was in that gallery in North Carolina. This room was a classroom. You can tell by this stool there, and that kid is the curator's daughter. And this is the board that represents white. Women have it too easy. I'm sure Native Americans, that second one, wild, hairy intruder topples empire. They did that in Mexico. I guess that's John McCain. War heroes' injuries tell everything. When hatred increases, truth exits. So just things like that, to sum it up. Almost like daily news headlines. Yeah, Boyd lynched as courthouse Kendalls. So I like him. I studied screenwriting, and we were told if you can tell your story in 3 sentences, you don't know your story. So this gives me practice when I do these kind of pieces. Run inside, get help, tell somebody. You know. Ryder immediately gave her the seat. So they all give you good pictures and stories of our racial history. That's me in a studio. I think this one's a video. Yes. So I just hit the play thing here. I show this because this is the magic and the madness of making art. Like the mad conductor. But what I have is a 500-foot roll of steel wire, and I'm threading the bottles onto it. So I have to, and it's coiled, so I have to like move it down as it goes. And I love the sound of it. I've actually recorded a sound like as a separate CD of sound. But this just shows that in the studio. This is the result of it. This is my front yard. You see them coiling all the way through there. And this is like probably 1/3 of what it turned out to be. So I guess I'm transitioning from steam irons to bottles now. So I had an opportunity to do a project at Grounds for Sculpture, and I got excited about it. I had all these great ideas because they have the outdoor area. But when I had the first meeting with the curator, I realized that they want me to exhibit indoors, and they don't have any production budget. So later on that day, I'm sitting with a friend by his pond in Union, New Jersey, drinking water, looking at his koi swimming around, and I'm squeezing my bottle, and I recognize all these little indentations and things in the bottle design. I was able to turn my bottle into a fish during that conversation. And that's when it hit me. I can make anything out of bottles, and there's a bunch of them. It won't cost me anything. So that I went from being Willie the Scorch to what I call Wee Willie Water Bottle. So that's who I am these days. So here they are, production requires lots of steps. So this is outside my house where I've already threaded all the bottles onto wire, and I have big rolls of bottles. So now when I have an idea, the parts are already made. I just grab them and make them. So that's what that was about. Here I am making a giant umbrella out of water bottles. Here we're making chandeliers out of water bottles. I do all this in my front yard when the weather's warm. My studio has been in my house for the past 10 years. Before that, I had a helicopter hangar, but I gave it up once I had the whole house to myself. So you see that firehouse up there? That's the location. This was the second water bottle show. The Sume Art Center in Newark and this Newark Fire Department asked me to hang a chandelier in their space. And I said, well, why not a full exhibition? So they agreed. This is the firehouse in the Iron Bound of Newark that they just store equipment in. So it had an empty space. So I have 2 rooms that are 15 feet by 15 feet and a chandelier in each room. I think there might be, you can see it there. So this was the beginning of the water bottle madness. And I get a lot of stuff in dreams. So after my experience of making the bird by the pond, that night I actually dreamed about a water bottle chandelier. And in that dream, I saw a Buddha in every bottle. You know, it's just my sick humor. You think about a chicken in every pot, and a Buddha in every bottle. Maybe that's what Bernie Sanders should be telling us, a Buddha in every bottle. So here are 2 chandeliers here. The one with me doing the Vanna White was in the Cartagena Biennial in Colombia, and the red one was in a show in New York about 3 years ago.
The red one's filled with liquid?
No, they're just filled with red cellophane. Yeah.
Inside of the cone figure?
No, these are solid. Yeah.
So each bottle's stuck in cellophane?
Yes, he's probably stuffed cellophane, but what you see on the outside is in the inside also. So it starts in the middle and it just keeps going out and out and out all around. But I get a lot of commissions to make these, and I make them hollow, just the outside, because of the labor. If I can get the prices up, I'd make them solid. So here's my crew. We're making now a piece of public art. You see my truck way down there. That's how big that is. We're making this tornado here in Summit, New Jersey, near the train station.
Is this up now?
No, this was 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This was 3 years ago. But you can see the people to give you an idea how tall that is. And here you see, I also make cars. So you see my old Toyota truck behind there, the ghost car, out of water bottles. I love the ghost car. I thought about making a TV commercial where someone would say, if Jesus Christ had a car, what would he drive? Ghost car. And then you show this, you know. Or it would be the 2019 H2O. This was at Boston University Gallery. This was based on a 58 Cadillac. So it's life size, it's 15 feet long. Interior, this is up now. This is at Wildflower Sculpture Park in Summit, New Jersey. And it's been through a few seasons. I love it in the winter. And this is another video. I know you all faculty probably have classes, so I should probably hurry up, right? I'm doing fine. Oh, okay. So an invitation to make a piece.
He's going to build a huge sculpture out of recycled bottles. So we kind of put our heads together along with Sandy Hubert, who's executive director of the communities. How can we get the bottles that are needed for this project? So we figured we needed about 5,000 bottles. So we decided to do a contest with all schools in Wayne City.
Yes, we had a nice team, all the ladies behind us. We had a school-wide program. Our principal and vice principal
They collected 20,000 bottles.
You know better, you'll do better. So just by the training and allowing people to know that this helps us to keep, the streets in the city, streets clean. This helps us to prevent from having our drainage system.
I think this was maybe just 3 years ago.
Artist, and his name is Willie Cole.
So I became this sustainability artist, the Earth Day artist. It's amazing. It's like a whole other business for me now. I get invited to schools to do projects with students for Earth Day, or corporations want to show their awareness, so they commission a chandelier. Here, there's a chicken in the back of my truck made out of water bottles. That's him upright. His name is Dasani, because he's sponsored by Coca-Cola, and they wanted all Dasani bottles. So I left the labels on the top bottles so they'd know it was Dasani bottles. It's at Atlantic City Convention Center. And here he is with his big bird, commissioned by New Jersey Clean Communities Council. This big one is 15 feet tall. And these birds are hollow. These are basically big trash cans. You can add more bottles to them as you go along. This is a small bird that came about just last year for a gallery in Connecticut. Unlike the previous birds that were hollow, this bird is solid. And this is only 6 feet long. This video shows me working with some young people. But this is at the Pingree School in Baskin Ridge, New Jersey. They're stuffing. We actually made the slide that came on after this in 2 days. They spent 4 months collecting the bottles. And because I had every student in school to help me, we actually made it in 2 days. And this is the piece that we made. This guy is about 20 feet tall. And he's stuffed with bottles too. He's about to go to some sculpture park upstate New York. He's at the school now still though. But he's sitting up now, different position. We changed him. Here's me in another life. Because I already said I was Willie the Scorch. I was Wee Willie Water Bottle. You know what my name is here? Willie Schumacher. So I make art out of shoes. Here I'm in my throne. Here's one of my pieces made from shoes but enlarged through digital magic and cast in bronze. This piece is in the collection of the City of Atlanta, the Newark Museum, and some museum in Texas whose name I can't think of. Here's me imitating one of my heroes, wearing one of my shoe masks. That's Picasso wearing the straw mask there. And here are some of the shoe masks. I don't remember all the titles, but they're just shoes.
Was this before irons?
No. I was graphic design was my major in school. And then I was an illustrator, then I was a writer, and then I was a painter. Because from illustration to painting was an easy bridge. But in the 70s, once the graffiti thing took off, I felt out of touch. I got out of college in 76. We actually learned photorealism as our painting style. My teacher was Chuck Close back in those days. So once they started with the graffiti, my paintings couldn't find a way into the marketplace. And painting supplies were so expensive, I started doing sculpture. I started with the iron first, and a lot of other things in between that. The shoes I've been doing since 2005. And I started making them in bronze and other materials just about maybe 5 years ago. This one's called, I know it's called the Zebra Town Mass, named it after Montclair, New Jersey. I don't know if you know that's Montclair's nickname, Zebra Town. You knew that? Okay. This is the Black Panther. Made this before the movie came out. This is eye candy. This one is our special guest. He's here live in the studio. Now, I made this for a show in Hong Kong. And in that show, I had him sitting in a display case that had mirrors on two sides, glass cover and glass on the bottom. So it looks huge like this because I wanted to convince my dealer to pay to have it blown up to like, 10 feet tall. It didn't work. She didn't go for it. But that's why I shot it like that. And I had a different name for it, but during that show, everybody that walked by said Transformer. And of course, I was in Hong Kong, so they didn't say Transformer. They said Transformer, Transformer. So that's his name now, Transformer. This is called Lizard Mommy, a name that my wife gave it. We wrote a book years ago called The Book of Band Names, and one of the names was in that book was Lizard Mommy. So this became Lizard Mommy. This one is the shoe fly. I made a piece. The rubber bands are not part of it, but in the construction process, just to see it before I make it permanent, I use whatever I can to hold together. But I made this piece, and it looked like I wanted to fly, and it led me to a whole journey about the shoe fly. So now the shoe fly is my current character in children's stories. The top is the shoe fly video game, The Battle of the Soul Survivors, and the bottom is a story. There was once a small shoe fly named Red who loved to get inside your head, blah blinky de blabby de booby de babby de booby de babby de bib. So that's shoe fly. And this, I think, is my last image, if I can get it to play. So this rolls kind of slow, it builds up, so we can, and there's no dialogue, so I can take your questions as you watch this. So thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing at the Center for New Art here?
What I've been doing?
Working here on campus with Professor Reese and his students.
Yes. Professor Reese put a concept in my mind that, and you know him better than I do, but he said, hey, you know what? You can make one of those digitally. So that's what I'm doing. I'm finding shoes in the computer and trying to assemble them to make one of my shoe masks in the computer, but then to print it out large in foam 3 times the actual size. That's the plan. Yeah. So any other questions?
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I'm kind of interested, the water bottle work, the earlier work has a lot of African mythology and religion and spirituality to it.
Right.
And then the water bottles seem to be a little bit of a break from that.
Right.
You don't mention it, you don't reference it.
Right.
Has it submerged? Is it still in there? And
Submerge is a good word when you talk about water. But this is the challenge is perception, because to me, all this work is about energy. And energy to me is spirit. The water bottle is a vessel that carries a life force that has energy, transported to us in a vessel that could kill us, a plastic bottle. So, and then the plastic itself, the way it plays with light, becomes very spiritual to me. So I see it as connected, just from that point of view. And also, if you take it back to the concept of energy, I'm using single objects multiplied. So that's me assigning a molecule. The molecule this week is a shoe, so I'm going to make things out of shoes. I'm not going to mix any other material with it, and I'm doing the same with a water bottle. I use only water bottles. So that's how it all connects for me. But I know people see it in interesting ways, always surprising me. And I don't always want to seem so granola, but to me it's all spiritual. And it's more about the, physics. It's the science of multiplication. It's like I'm sitting here now in a room full of people, but I'm not really sitting in a room. I'm sitting in a room full of dots that are held together by vibration. And from that point of view, you all look exactly alike. So that's what I'm pursuing in the art. The music made me get dramatic with it.
very good. Nice timing.
Yes.
I did have another question too, which is, your work seems to have a lot of playfulness.
Right.
And, especially the more, you want to turn that off?
No, I just want to turn the volume down a little
I
bit.
don't know where the volume is. There we go.
That's good. Yeah. I don't know.
So your work seems to have a lot of playfulness, and it seems to increase as your time goes on. Not that the earlier work wasn't playful
Right,
too,
right.
but it had a seriousness about it, a
Right.
seriousness of purpose.
Yeah.
How do you give yourself a license? You're an adult to play like that.
Well, I mean, what our goal is to be children again. Is to have that freedom and that curiosity. Also, I raised 4 kids who loved cartoons and whose my life goal to keep inspired. So when they were small, there are things that I don't show as fine art that I made just for my kids. Like, I don't know anybody here know the cartoon show Cow and Chicken from the Cartoon Network. Remember the red guy? He's in front of my house. I made him for my daughter. She loved the red guy. I made him out of styrofoam. He's about this big and coated with Bondo and painted red at an auto body shop. So, but also seriousness, like I don't make the work with a smile. It comes out that way and I just accept it, And I don't always even see it as any humor in it until people say that it's funny or whatever. But I am just interested in expression, making you see things differently, proving to myself that I can make anything out of anything. Those are the things that motivate me to do the work these days.
I'd be interested to know what your dream project is. Like you talked about the limitations in different projects and having
Right.
to make do, but if you had no limitations, what would that be?
Oh, you mean in life or just in the studio?
I guess it could be either.
Yeah. The challenge for me with that question is I have so many things I want to do that I've started and haven't finished. So my actual dream project would be to complete a screenplay that I wrote 10 years ago, that I've rewritten it 3 times. I've made paintings about it. I've made poetry about it. I once thought about doing it as performance art as a one-person show. So I'd like to see that in the world. And most of my writing is about mythology, mythological gods, but in the new world, with a whole new approach to their godliness. So that's what that story is about. So I'd love to see that. But I also want to see my Legba principle, revolving doors in a football field that big, so you get lost in it. We have surveillance cameras all around it, so people outside the stadium can watch you going through the maze like a rat. I'd love to do that. That's what I would say today to that question. Yeah. Sir.
I can just talk. I'm really loud. I don't know if I need a microphone. Yeah.
They need it for the
Oh,
video.
okay. All right. Is this even on? Oh, okay. So my question is, when you say godliness, the materials you use are always like, it's about this unit that you choose, and then it's about that accumulation,
Right.
and it's always a quotidian object.
Right.
So is your point? It seems like your point of view is about presenting kind of an everydayness to it, and about maybe an idea of God that's not an exalted entity, but something that comes or that connects, or
That's close, yeah.
because I feel like you're the shoes and everything. I mean, I'm sure you're going to Goodwill or collecting
Right.
to get these shoes, and
Right.
You're not making like marble statues,
Right.
It's you seem like you want people to touch things. You want, even if like people can't touch it, we've all touched a shoe.
Right.
But it's also very earthy.
Yeah.
The shoe touches the ground.
It's very it's utilitarian, but also like what I like about the shoes is then there is the glamour of it.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, I'm interested in objects that have had contact with humans. Like I have heard the quote that 90% of dust in your house is you.
I'm sorry. What was the quote?
90% of the dust in your house is you.
Oh.
So every place you go, you're dropping a little bit of you, you know. I mean, wherever you've been in your life, you're still there in some sense, you know, because your particles have been dropped behind. They may have merged with other particles and become other experiences. So I'm looking for objects that have a memory of contact with humans. So the steam iron has had that, the shoe has had that, the water bottles had that. I've made a lot of work out of bicycles, so bicycles have had that. Telephones, they've had that. So I'm looking to exorcise the memory of the object to the point where the object that I make becomes alive, you know, as just opposed to static. And it could be all in my imagination, but I really, you know, my goal when I make something, because I don't make any sketches, I don't know what I'm going to make until I see it. But once that I see it's looking back at me and it's alive, then I know it's finished. So you're right on with that question and the comment on awareness.
Pleasure. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, you had mentioned earlier about paying attention. How do you exercise that attention to paying attention and being aware of the serendipity events that happen? And how do you really focus on that in the creation of your work and in just your daily practices?
Right. Well, any state that you want to be in, physical state, you should first just claim it, say it. Like you want a little kid, I want to play basketball. You say it, and then you go out and you do it. Mm-hmm. So by saying that I want to be aware and conscious of the moment I'm in, it's just a declaration that I don't forget. So when I'm talking to you and in the back of my mind I'm hearing, you know, some crazy pop song, you know, I can turn it off because I'm not focused on that now. Because our mind, you know, I mean, how many thousands of thoughts do we have a second? There's a lot of stuff going on. You wake up in the morning singing a Pepsi commercial, don't even know where it came from. Mm-hmm. You know, so much of us is on autopilot. They say this, most people have the same thoughts every day because they're not focused, they're not aware of the moment they're in. You're in the shower, you're not thinking about getting clean, you're thinking about your work, you're thinking about your schedule, so you're missing the beauty of relationship with the water. So just claiming it makes it happen, and meditation helps that too. The meditation process kind of builds up kind of slow. I haven't mastered it myself, but you know, I listen to a lot of meditation experts, advisors on those kind of things. And they say if you can focus on every part of your body, starting at your head, give like 20 seconds to your head, your eyes, your ears, just trying to feel it. Because you can't think about your body and other things at the same time. Other things will jump in and disturb you, but you always have to try to pull it back to where you were. By the time you get to your feet, supposedly you've got it. And that's challenging to do. But doing that allows you to step out of your body, because we don't think about our bodies. It's like you don't know you have, if you're like this, you don't even have a finger until either touches something or you have pain in it. So if you close your eyes, you turn off all your sensory perception and you can focus more into space. So if you know your full body physically in a space, then you can focus on the space around you. So now you're in a whole new world. You're just consciousness, and it just grows from there. But it's like a daily practice.
I have one more question. Another question I had on one of the scorch print patterns that you had different colors or different. I don't know if they were made by the scorch themselves, or did you add paint to the scorches to make them different hues?
If it was a brightly colored
yellow.
silkscreen piece, it was a silkscreen.
Uh-huh.
So the colors just came from that.
Okay.
The ones that are mostly brownish or brownish red or blackish brown or reddish black are directly from the steam iron. I can't add color to them, but I've discovered if I spray the paper first, then I get a second color, kind of a second tone from the scorch color.
How many times have you burned yourself doing some of your artwork?
I never burned myself. I never burned myself. I burned myself, but on a card, not on a steam iron. Man. Yep. I was,
Can you pass that back?
but I'll just say I burned myself in 1978 from here to here because I had a raggedy sports car that would overheat every day, a Fiat. And one day I was so frustrated, I just opened the hood and pulled the cap off the radiator at the gas station, and but it forced me to be right-handed for a year because I'm left-handed, and that allowed me to discover that right and left doesn't make sense. You could use any hand.
Wow.
You just don't know that because I did a lot of paintings with my right hand during those years.
So that question reminded me of what I was dying to ask you before.
Okay.
Why did you decide to use the tops of the irons and heat them separately rather than just using the iron with its electrical heat surging through it?
Well, I don't think it gets hot enough, but it might take longer too.
You haven't watched me iron.
Okay.
Like you said, 15 minutes, right, for some of those prints?
Yeah.
For some of those scorches?
Yeah, I heat it for 15 minutes. Now I use a forge outside, so I let it get red hot. And with a red hot iron, I can do a 4x8 piece of plywood in probably 20 minutes.
So Willie, when I look at the work that you show, and then I also hear you talk about your practice, you got a lot of things that you do that are outside of the standard, what people know you for, right? You've written
True.
screenplays, you've done
That's
these
true.
things. You're kind of a polymath. And I think that for young artists, at least I remember when I was young, I felt this intense pressure to get a thing and just do that thing, kind of be like Cezanne, where I'm just
Right.
doing that landscape over and over, I'm
Right.
doing the still life. How did you manage all this diversity in your studio practice?
Well, we're talking about. I'm trying not to keep saying this, but I'm an old guy. I've been around. I've had a lot of opportunities to do things. So because I went to Arts High School in Newark, and I was a double major, art and music. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City, and they had two models at the school. One was our Times call for multiple careers, and the other one was what is a talent if you don't know what to do with it. So those things just inspired me my whole life. So before I had a dealer, I tried to do all those things at once. I had a band. I thought I was going to win the Olympic marathon. I was in a theater company in New York City. So all these things at once. Then I realized I wasn't making any money. So I stopped all of that and just started doing sculpture. So now in my life, 35 years later, I'm bringing them all back because now I have the time and the freedom to do it. But having that single focus on one task, or at least one discipline, I would recommend that for any young artists, or maybe some of you young professors can share it with your students. But I think that's important. It's just that now, at 64 years old, I just feel I don't want to die with any unfulfilled dreams. So I pursue all my interests now. Yeah.
Do you feel any kind of surge of synchronicity between using these items that are kind of have a similar shape between them, the iron and the shoe
And the shoe,
and the
yeah.
water bottle, having sort of the same profile?
Yeah. Everything that I do with shoes, I learned with irons. The water bottle's a different thing. The water bottles, the way I put the water bottles together is something I observed in South Africa, where artists are making beaded sculptures where the beads are on wires. So I'm doing that same thing, except for I got water bottles on wire. But definitely the shoes and the irons, like the iron is undergrad and the shoe is grad. Yeah. Yeah, yes. And in South America, so much light bulbs and, yeah. Thank
All right,
you.
very good. I think we'll close it up now. But thanks everybody for coming. And I also
Yes,
wanted to
thank you.
mention that today, from 2 to 3 in room B46, Winifred McNeil will give a talk in the art gallery. I just wanted to make a plug for that. But Willie, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all. Thank you all.